Black firefighter rescues trapped CEO. In return, he's rehired and admired. Smoke billowed through the cracks of the elevator doors on the 37th floor. Inside, a man in an expensive suit was slumped against the wall, his breathing labored as the smoke thickened. The building's fire alarm blared, but William Jackson, a 55-year-old black firefighter with salt and pepper hair and 27 years of experience, remained focused despite the chaos. "Sir, can you hear me?" William shouted through the small gap between the elevator doors. His weathered hands gripped the Jaws of Life hydraulic spreader. "We're going to get you out. Stay low to the ground," a weak voice responded from within. "I can't breathe." William recognized that voice immediately. His heart nearly stopped. Through the smoke and flames, he was trying to save Robert Whitfield, the same CEO who had fired him from his security job at Whitfield Industries 5 years ago, calling him obsolete to his face. The same man who had taken away his health care when his wife Margaret was starting cancer treatments. The elevator cables groaned ominously overhead. They had minutes, maybe seconds. "Chief, this whole floor's about to go," shouted William's younger partner, Keith. "We need to evacuate now." William locked eyes with Keith. "I can get him go, that's an order." As the ceiling began to collapse around them, William forced the hydraulic spreader between the elevator doors with renewed determination. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm getting you out of here," William said, his voice steady despite everything between them. "But I need you to trust me." But let's go back to how this all started. It was just 3 hours earlier when William Jackson woke to the sound of his alarm clock radio playing Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On." William Jackson stretched and silenced his alarm clock. The red numbers glowed 5:30 a.m. Beside him, his wife Margaret slept peacefully, her breathing steady and strong, something he never took for granted since her recovery. The morning light filtered through their modest bedroom curtains in their East Side home, casting a gentle glow on family photos that lined the dresser. 27 years as a firefighter, 6 weeks until retirement. William had been counting down, planning fishing trips and long postponed projects around the house. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, feeling the familiar ache in his right knee, a souvenir from a warehouse fire in '98. In the kitchen, William brewed coffee and turned on the small television to catch the morning news. A reporter stood outside Whitfield Tower downtown, the gleaming 50-story headquarters of Whitfield Industries. "Celebrating its 25th anniversary today, Whitfield Industries continues to be the city's largest employer," the reporter said. "CEO Robert Whitfield will be hosting a charity gala tonight with proceeds benefiting the Children's Hospital." William snorted and switched off the TV. Robert Whitfield's charity events were well-known publicity stunts. William had worked security at Whitfield Industries for nearly 10 years before becoming a firefighter. 5 years ago, when the company downsized, Whitfield had personally called William obsolete while laying him off, just when Margaret had been diagnosed with cancer. The timing couldn't have been worse. They'd nearly lost their house when the medical bills piled up. If not for the firefighter position coming through, they might have ended up on the street. William finished his coffee, kissed the still-sleeping Margaret on the forehead, and headed to the station. The early June morning was already warm, promising a scorching day ahead. At Fire Station 27, the crew was changing shifts. William's team consisted of Keith Reynolds, an eager 28-year-old who reminded William of himself at that age. Sophia Martinez, their 35-year-old paramedic with unmatched medical skills, and Captain James Moore, a steady leader in his early 50s who had been William's friend since they trained together decades ago. "Morning, Will," Captain Moore greeted him. "Last month before the gold watch, how's it feel?" William hung up his jacket. "Won't feel real until the paperwork's signed." "Margaret planning that surprise party she thinks you don't know about?" Moore asked with a grin. William chuckled. "I've been practicing my surprised face, don't want to disappoint her." Keith came bounding in, energy radiating from him as always. "Morning, old-timers, ready for another day of saving lives." "Who you calling old?" William replied good-naturedly. "I can still outrun you any day, rookie." Sophia arrived last, carrying a tray of coffees. "Thought we could use the good stuff today." "It's supposed to hit 98 degrees. They settled into the morning routine, checking equipment, reviewing procedures, and maintaining the engines. William took special care with engine 27, polishing the chrome until he could see his reflection. This engine had been his second home for nearly 3 decades. Around noon, they received a call about a kitchen fire in an apartment building. It was handled quickly, with no injuries. By mid-afternoon, they were back at the station, the temperature climbing as predicted. William was in the middle of preparing an early dinner for the crew when the alarm blared. Captain Moore rushed in with details. Fire reported at Whitfield Tower, downtown. Multiple floors affected, possible structural concerns. Let's move. William felt a chill despite the heat. Whitfield Tower. As they sped toward downtown, sirens wailing, he could see the black smoke rising against the blue sky. His mind raced with memories of the building where he'd once worked, its layout, its weaknesses, its emergency systems that were outdated even 5 years ago. "Will, you know this building, right?" Captain Moore asked from the front seat. "Like the back of my hand," William confirmed. "But they were cutting corners on safety when I left. Fire doors that didn't seal properly, sprinkler systems that needed updating. Any information you have could save lives today," Moore said gravely. As they approached Whitfield Tower, the situation looked dire. Flames were visible from windows on multiple floors near the middle of the building. Crowds of evacuated employees stood across the street, many coughing and being treated by paramedics. The incident commander, Chief Peterson, was coordinating efforts when they arrived. "We've got people trapped on floors 30 through 40. The fire started on 34, some kind of electrical issue, and spread quickly. Building security says most people got out, but we have reports of at least a dozen still inside." "What about the executive floor?" William asked, knowing that the 37th floor housed Whitfield's office and those of other executives. "Unconfirmed reports that some executives were in a meeting and may not have evacuated in time," Chief Peterson replied. "The elevators are shut down, but we've had reports of at least one that might be stuck between floors 36 and 37 with someone inside." William and Keith were assigned to check the executive floor. As they climbed the stairs in full gear, William's mind was focused, but couldn't help remembering the layout of the 37th floor. The executive conference room faced east, with Whitfield's corner office commanding views north and east. By the time they reached the 30th floor, both men were breathing heavily. 7 more flights to go. The stairwell was hot, but still passable. "You doing okay, old man?" Keith asked between breaths. "Save your breath, rookie," William replied, though his knee was screaming and sweat poured down his face inside his mask. They reached the 37th floor to find the corridor filled with thick smoke. The fire doors that should have contained the spread were propped open, a safety violation William had reported numerous times when he worked there. "Floor's clear," crackled a voice over the radio. Another team had already swept for survivors. "Copy that," William responded. "We're checking the executive wing and the stuck elevator." They moved methodically through the smoke-filled corridor toward the executive suite. William knew exactly where they were despite the poor visibility. When they reached the elevator bank, they could hear pounding from inside one of the cars. William approached the doors, feeling heat radiating from them. "Fire department, is someone in there?" "Help," came a weak voice. "I can't breathe in here." William and Keith exchanged looks. The voice sounded distressed but oddly familiar to William. "Sir, we're going to get you out," William called back. "Stay low to the ground where the air is clearer." Keith radioed their position while William prepared the hydraulic spreader. As they began working on the doors, the building shuddered ominously. "This whole floor's about to go," Keith warned, looking up at the ceiling where the tiles were beginning to buckle from the heat. William peered through the small gap they'd created between the elevator doors. Through the smoke, he could make out a figure in an expensive suit slumped against the wall. When the man looked up, William recognized Robert Whitfield's face, older, lined with fear, but unmistakable. For a brief moment, William hesitated. The man who had callously fired him, who had called him obsolete to his face, who had cut off his family's health insurance when they needed it most, was now depending on him for survival. "Chief, we need to evacuate now," Keith insisted as more debris fell around them. William locked eyes with his partner. "I can get him, go, that's an order." "Like hell," Keith replied stubbornly. "We go together or not at all, that's the code." William nodded gratefully and refocused on the task. With renewed determination, he forced the hydraulic spreader further between the doors. "Mr. Whitfield," William called, his voice steady despite everything between them. "I'm getting you out of here, but I need you to trust me." William reached into the elevator and grabbed Whitfield, pulling the CEO to safety just as a section of ceiling collapsed where they had been standing moments before. Whitfield was barely conscious, suffering from smoke inhalation. "We need to move now," William urged, supporting Whitfield's weight as the 3 men began making their way back toward the stairwell. The journey down was treacherous. By the 20th floor, William was carrying Whitfield over his shoulder in a fireman's carry, his knee threatening to buckle with every step. Keith led the way, clearing debris and checking that each landing was still structurally sound. By the 10th floor, they could hear other firefighters coming up to assist. By the ground floor, medical teams were waiting. William gently laid Whitfield on a stretcher, exhausted but relieved they'd made it out. As paramedics placed an oxygen mask over Whitfield's face, the CEO grabbed William's arm with surprising strength. "Your face," Whitfield said, his voice raspy. "I know you." William removed his helmet and mask, revealing his sweat-streaked face. "William Jackson, sir, I used to work security for you." Recognition dawned in Whitfield's eyes before the paramedics whisked him away to a waiting ambulance. William watched them go, a complex mix of emotions washing over him. Captain Moore approached, clapping a hand on William's shoulder. "Good work in there, Will. They're saying the building's a total loss above the 30th floor, but everyone's accounted for. No casualties." William nodded, suddenly feeling every one of his 55 years. "I need to sit down for a minute, James." Moore looked concerned. "You okay? Should I get Sophia to check you out?" "No, just need to catch my breath," William assured him, sinking onto the bumper of engine 27. "Just thinking about how life comes full circle sometimes." "What do you mean?" Moore asked. William gestured toward the ambulance pulling away with Whitfield inside. "That man fired me 5 years ago, called me obsolete to my face. Today I carried him down 27 flights of stairs." Moore whistled low. "The universe has a sense of humor, doesn't it?" "Something like that," William agreed, removing his gloves and flexing his stiff fingers. The rest of the day was spent containing the fire and ensuring no hot spots remained. By evening, William's shift was over, but he felt too wired to go home immediately. Instead, he found himself driving to Mercy Hospital, where he knew the fire victims had been taken. In the emergency room waiting area, William spotted a woman he recognized as Patricia Whitfield, Robert's wife. She was speaking with a doctor, her elegant features tight with worry. William hesitated, unsure why he had come or what he hoped to accomplish. Patricia noticed him standing there in his FDNY t-shirt, still sooty from the fire. "Are you one of the firefighters from Whitfield Tower?" she asked, approaching him. William nodded. "Yes, ma'am, William Jackson. I helped bring your husband out." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "The doctor says you saved his life, if you hadn't reached him when you did." She trailed off, composing herself. "Thank you seems inadequate." "Just doing my job, ma'am," William replied automatically. "Would you like to see him? He's asking about the firefighter who carried him down, says he knows you." William hesitated again. "I'm not sure that's a good idea. We have history." Patricia's expression changed subtly. "You're that William Jackson from security." William was surprised she remembered him. "Yes, ma'am." "Please come with me," she said, something unreadable in her tone. "I think Robert would want to see you." William followed her to a private room where Robert Whitfield lay in bed, an oxygen tube in his nose, his normally commanding presence diminished by hospital monitors and IV lines. When he saw William, his eyes widened. "Jackson," he said, his voice still raspy. "You're the last person I expected to see again." William stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed. "Just wanted to make sure you were okay, sir. After what happened between us," Whitfield asked, "most people would have left me in that elevator." William shook his head firmly. "That's not who I am." "No," Whitfield agreed thoughtfully. "I'm beginning to see that." He coughed, and Patricia quickly offered him water. "The doctor says I'll make a full recovery thanks to you." "I'm glad to hear it," William said sincerely. An uncomfortable silence fell. William was about to excuse himself when Whitfield spoke again. "I've thought about you over the years, you know, especially after I heard about your wife's illness. I've regretted how things ended." William was stunned. "You knew about Margaret." "This city's smaller than it seems," Whitfield replied. "How is she?" "In remission, 3 years now." "That's good to hear." Whitfield shifted uncomfortably. "Jackson, I made a mistake with those layoffs. The board was pushing for cuts, and I lost sight of the human cost. It's no excuse, but I want you to know I'm sorry." William hadn't expected an apology, especially not after all this time. He didn't know how to respond. Patricia filled the silence. "Robert, why don't you tell him about the foundation?" Whitfield nodded. "After the layoffs, Patricia convinced me to start a foundation for employees facing medical hardships. It doesn't make up for what happened, but it's helped a lot of families since then." William absorbed this information, his perception of the Whitfields shifting slightly. "I'm retiring next month," William said finally. 27 years with the department." "Any plans?" Whitfield asked. William shrugged. "Fishing, house projects, spending time with Margaret." Whitfield exchanged a look with his wife before turning back to William. "Would you consider consulting work? The fire today exposed serious flaws in our corporate safety protocols. I need someone who knows both security and fire safety, someone who will be honest even when it's not what I want to hear." William was taken aback. "You're offering me a job after you called me obsolete?" "I'm offering you a chance to make sure what happened today never happens again," Whitfield clarified. "And I'm admitting I was wrong about you, dead wrong." "I'd need to think about it," William said cautiously. Of course, Whitfield agreed. Take all the time you need. The position will be there when you're ready. As William drove home that evening, his mind was swirling with the day's events. He had gone to work expecting a routine shift and ended up saving the life of a man he'd resented for years, a man who had now apologized and offered him a second chance. When he arrived home, Margaret was waiting on the porch swing, her face pale with worry. She rose quickly when she saw him. "I saw the news about Whitfield Tower," she said, embracing him tightly. "They said there were no casualties, but I've been so worried." William held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I'm okay. It was a close call, but we got everyone out." Inside, over a late dinner, William told Margaret everything about finding Whitfield in the elevator, the rescue, and the unexpected job offer. "What are you going to do?" Margaret asked when he'd finished. William sighed, pushing the remains of his food around his plate. "I don't know. Part of me still resents him for what happened, but today in that hospital room he seemed different, humbled maybe. People can change," Margaret said thoughtfully, "especially after facing their own mortality." She reached across the table to take his hand. "What does your heart tell you?" "That I'm tired of fighting old battles," William admitted. "That maybe this is a chance to turn something painful into something good." Margaret smiled, the same smile that had sustained him through their hardest days. "Then I think you have your answer." The next morning, William called the hospital and learned that Robert Whitfield had been discharged. Taking a deep breath, he dialed the number Patricia had given him. To his surprise, Whitfield himself answered. "Jackson, I was hoping you'd call." "About that consulting position," William began. "I'd like to discuss the details." "Excellent," Whitfield replied, sounding genuinely pleased. "How about lunch tomorrow? There's someone else I'd like you to meet as well." The following day, William found himself at an upscale restaurant downtown, feeling slightly out of place in his best blazer. Whitfield was already seated at a corner table, along with a young woman William didn't recognize. "Jackson," Whitfield greeted him, standing to shake his hand. "I'd like you to meet my daughter, Emily. She's taking over as Chief Operations Officer next month." Emily Whitfield was in her early 30s, with her father's sharp eyes but a warmer demeanor. "Mr. Jackson, it's an honor to meet you. Dad told me what you did. Thank you for saving him." As they settled into their seats, William noticed Robert Whitfield moving stiffly, still recovering from his ordeal. "How are you feeling?" William asked. "Like I was carried down 27 flights of stairs," Whitfield replied with a wry smile, "but grateful to be alive." He turned serious. "The building inspectors have confirmed what you suspected. Those propped fire doors made the situation much worse. We were lucky no one died." "It wasn't luck," Emily interjected. "It was Mr. Jackson and his team." "Please call me William," he insisted. The waiter came to take their orders, and once he'd gone, Whitfield got down to business. "Here's what I'm proposing," he said. "A full audit of safety protocols across all Whitfield Industries properties, starting immediately. You'd report directly to Emily with the authority to implement whatever changes you deem necessary." "That's a lot of responsibility," William noted. Emily leaned forward. "That's exactly why we need someone with your experience. The truth is, Dad's generation built this company, but some things got overlooked along the way. Cost-cutting measures took priority over safety," Whitfield admitted bluntly. "I'm not proud of it, but I'm trying to make it right." William studied them both, sensing their sincerity. "I'd want a commitment to retrofit all buildings to current fire codes, not just the minimum required by law." "Done," Emily said without hesitation. "And a program for employees, training, equipment, regular drills." "Absolutely," Whitfield agreed. "Whatever you recommend." "One more thing," William added. "I'd want to expand that foundation you mentioned, create a specific fund for emergency responders and their families facing hardship." Whitfield and Emily exchanged looks. "That's actually a wonderful idea," Emily said. "We could announce it at the reopening of the tower." "So, do we have a deal?" Whitfield extended his hand across the table. William thought about the journey that had brought him here, from being fired by this man to saving his life, from resentment to the possibility of a new beginning. He thought about Margaret's words, "People can change." He reached out and shook Whitfield's hand. "We have a deal." Over the next several weeks, as William completed his final days with the fire department, plans for his new role took shape. The story of the black firefighter who had saved the CEO who once fired him made the local news, then national headlines. It became a symbol of forgiveness and second chances that resonated with people across the country. On his last day at Station 27, William's colleagues threw him a retirement party. Captain Moore presented him with a ceremonial fire axe mounted on a plaque. 27 years of service," Moore announced to the assembled crew. "Countless lives saved, one hell of a firefighter." There were tears in William's eyes as he accepted the plaque. "This station has been my second home," he said, "and all of you my second family." Keith, who had been by his side during the Whitfield Tower rescue, approached him afterward. "So you're going to work for the man who fired you?" "That's a plot twist I didn't see coming." William smiled. "Life's funny that way. Sometimes the person who hurts you becomes the one who helps you heal. Just don't forget us little people when you're rubbing elbows with the corporate types," Keith joked. "Never," William promised. "In fact, I'll be implementing new training programs between Whitfield Industries and the department. You'll probably be seeing more of me, not less." The next chapter began with the reopening ceremony of the partially renovated Whitfield Tower 6 months later. William stood on a podium alongside Robert and Emily Whitfield, feeling strangely at home in his new role as Director of Corporate Safety and Emergency Preparedness. Robert Whitfield stepped up to the microphone. "6 months ago, a terrible fire nearly cost many lives, including my own. Today, we reopen with a renewed commitment to the safety of everyone who works in or visits our buildings." He gestured to William. "I'd like to introduce William Jackson, whose courage saved my life that day. William was once an employee of this company who I wrongfully dismissed. In saving me, he taught me about forgiveness, second chances, and the true meaning of character." William stepped forward as applause filled the atrium. "Thank you. 5 years ago, I left this building feeling that my contributions didn't matter. Today, I return with the knowledge that every person's safety and well-being matter above all else." He unveiled a plaque that would hang in the lobby. "The William and Margaret Jackson First Responders Fund, supporting those who risk everything to save others." In the front row, Margaret wiped away tears, surrounded by William's former colleagues from Station 27. Keith gave him a thumbs up. As the ceremony concluded, Robert drew William aside. "You've done remarkable work these past 6 months. The new safety systems exceed anything I could have imagined." "Just the beginning," William assured him. "We've got 14 more properties to bring up to standard. And you'll have whatever resources you need," Robert promised. "By the way, Patricia and I would love to have you and Margaret over for dinner next weekend. Nothing formal, just a chance to get to know each other better." William nodded, remembering how he had once sworn he'd never break bread with Robert Whitfield. "We'd like that." Later that evening, as William and Margaret walked through their neighborhood, enjoying the cool spring air, she squeezed his hand. "I'm so proud of you, not just for saving him, but for finding a way to forgive." William thought about the journey of the past 6 months, the lives that would be saved by the new safety measures, the first responders who would benefit from the fund, the walls that had come down between him and Robert Whitfield. "Sometimes," he said, "the hardest person to save is yourself from bitterness from the past. I think that day in the fire we both got rescued." They stopped to watch the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. William put his arm around Margaret's shoulders, grateful for second chances, new beginnings, and the unexpected paths that had led him here. In the distance, they could hear the faint sound of a siren, firefighters rushing to help someone in need. William said a silent prayer for their safety, knowing better than most that sometimes the person you save today might be the one who helps you tomorrow. Now back to where we started, with William forcing the hydraulic spreader between the elevator doors to rescue Robert Whitfield. In that moment of crisis, neither man could have imagined how their lives would become intertwined, how old wounds would heal, or how they would both find redemption in the aftermath of disaster. As William carried Whitfield down those 27 flights of stairs, each painful step was taking them not just to safety, but toward a new understanding. That sometimes, the hand that pulls you from the fire belongs to someone you least expect, and sometimes the greatest act of courage is not saving a life, but changing one. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.